All right. Welcome to the Gen Z Stoic podcast. I'm your host, Ren.
And I'm your co-host, Mateo Gonzaga.
So basically, what we're trying to do with this podcast is we're providing a view on life through the lens of Stoicism, which is a historic school of philosophy. It kind of serves as a guide to navigating some common situations from the lens of somebody who are both Generation Z, so we're providing lens at issues that are more common to the digital age than have largely been to people throughout history. We're trying to come at it through the mindset of just self-improvement and growth. We hope that kind of voicing our lived experiences. We're both high school seniors. We've both grown up in the digital age. We've seen some of the harms of social media and just kind of that instant gratification mindset in general. And so for people who struggle with problems like self-image, struggle with motivation, and just feel like a sense of lack of belonging, we're hoping that Stoicism provides kind of some of the healthy solutions to that. And I don't know about you, but it has to me, especially as we look at self-improvement and motivation.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, the big thing is our generation has grown up drastically different than any of our parents. We're in a new digital age where you have instant access to instant dopamine, to likes, to anything is at our fingertips now. We're used to being so comfortable, and that can be the downfall of a lot of people. And so ultimately, we understand that the opinions and perspectives that we're presenting on this podcast may be unconventional and uncomfortable, but ultimately we speak our truth, and we hope that you listen with an open mind and question everything that we say rather than just accepting it.
And so our mission really isn't, we're not motivated by streams, we're not motivated by any of that kind of BS, but we're motivated just by reaching people through our lived experiences, through the lens of Stoicism, and kind of offering those healthy solutions. And so to kind of fulfill that mission, I think we're going to be uniquely dedicated to engaging with our audience, however small or big it is. And so we encourage you right from the jump, comment on our YouTube video, DM us on our Instagram, send us emails, questions, comments, feedback. Like, we really welcome all of that. Our episodes are going to be geared towards certain situations, but if you feel that there's a situation that you'd like us to touch on or that we kind of miss, we would really welcome that.
Reach out and let us know. I mean, we want to engage with you as much as you want to engage with us. We want to speak the truth. We want you to listen, but we also want you to speak back so we can listen and take your opinions and then develop that into further content for you guys.
So with that being said, that's kind of our mission. That's kind of where we're coming from. Like I said, we're both high school seniors. We've both gone through some stuff.
Mm-hmm. And we still have much more to go through.
Right. And so we want to kind of impart our wisdom through our experiences. And we also want to grow along with you through this podcast. I know we're about to touch on some of the tenets of Stoicism, but one of the teachings is to find people that are like you, are malleable, and to impart what you've learned on them and then grow along with them. Mm-hmm. So let's get right into the episode.
Let's do it. It's exciting.
Obviously, Gen Z Stoic, our first episode is going to be on Stoicism. History, some lessons we've learned, how we've applied it to our lives, and how we think that you can apply it to yours.
Yeah, very good. So I think we should just start off by defining our definition of Stoicism and just a well-known definition of the word. So ultimately, Stoicism is pursuing self-mastery of your emotions, persevering through hardship, seeking wisdom, constant evolution of yourself. Stoics in the past have strived to control their emotions, and instead of letting their emotions control them, they have been focused on controlling their mind instead of letting your impulses get to you. Ultimately, the four main virtues of Stoicism are wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. All Stoics believe that if you act with all of these virtues, then everything else is going to follow. Happiness, love, success, honor, etc.
And I think Stoicism, both throughout history and now, like if you think of somebody as stoic, right, you think of them as cold-hearted, you think of them as not really being emotional. But I think, to me, and certainly correct me if you think differently, Stoicism isn't so much as being cold and not having emotions as being in control of your emotions.
I agree.
Certainly, we both experience anger, we both experience frustration, we both experience sadness. probably daily. But it's instead of letting that rule you, you kind of have control over it, and so you rule your emotions.
Right. And you know when to show them. There are certain times for when you need to show certain emotions, and there's also times where just emotions don't need to be showed at all. And in today's society, there's so many emotions with all the social media and dopamine that we're consuming at such a fast pace that we're used to seeing constant emotion all the time. And I think that being calm and in a Zen state is very very important today.
Well, and there's also something to be said that Stoicism preaches a reserved lifestyle and kind of being very introspective, judging yourself based on how you view what your character should be and how you're measuring up to that. We'll definitely go over some more on that. But it's just something to be said in an age of social media and people posting things that they probably shouldn't and should keep to themselves. And want to put every second of their lives out there. It's definitely different to be preaching that you should definitely live reserved.
Agreed.
Only show certain parts of yourself to certain people that you trust with it.
And I believe we've lost the value of our own privacy. I mean, with you said, posting everything everywhere. Privacy is such an important gift. It's important to have time to yourself that nobody knows what you're doing except for yourself. But now when you can post that anywhere all the time, and then you get likes and feedback on that, you're totally disrupting your own privacy.
And I think that it doesn't allow you that time to be introspective, and that's really valuable. If you set yourself up to, I'm going to talk about Seneca, where you have a model, that's very important to have a model in your life. It doesn't have to be a parent. It can be really anybody who you view that has high character and conducts themselves in a way that you would be proud if you conducted themselves the same way. If you get that time to analyze them and then analyze yourself, it's very valuable because those are periods where you grow the most. You're not going to grow when you're posting on social media and you're getting that instant feedback, that instant dopamine. But if you withdraw yourself from the opinion of, let's say, the common man, that's very valuable for you to just look at yourself, look at if you're measuring up to the goals you set for yourself.
Well, that's the thing as well, is on social media, you're really only looking at other people's lives. You almost know more about other people and what they're doing than you know about yourself and what you're truly interested in.
Yeah.
And if you're truly interested and content with that, then that's fine. But if you really have a sense of developing yourself and becoming deeper understanding of your mind, what you truly value in life and what's really important to you, then you'll take a step back, spend time doing absolutely nothing except thinking with yourself.
I think obviously we take a very negative tone to social media, but we're certainly not trying to demonize it. There's aspects of social media that are very good. For example, we're going to be using it to market our podcast.
Yeah.
So marketing, social networking, social media is an unparalleled tool in history to do that. It's just it's used commonly by Gen Z and millennials in an unhealthy way.
Agreed.
To where you compare yourselves to people or you're more invested in what other people
and the
are
way
doing.
the apps are designed, they're very addictive.
Yeah.
Just spreading information in mass very quickly is not a bad thing.
No.
And that's how good things are able to spread. But when it's misconstrued and it's bad information, toxic to the mental health of Generation Z and young adults, that's when it's bad.
It's just realizing it's addictive, realizing that it's been used and is currently used in unhealthy ways.
Agreed.
And you don't necessarily have to pull yourself out of social media completely. I know both of us are trying to do that right now.
I think it's a dopamine detox. I think it's important. When I say balance, I don't mean one day you're working hard, the next day you're off,
right,
wasting your health, wasting your mental. But I think that balance is important with healthy habits. Sometimes you work hard, and with other times you're relaxing, but you're still taking in what valuable information from like reading or something.
Yeah. And with that being said, that's just kind of a brief definition, how we've applied it a little bit. We'd also like to talk about the history of it because it's important when you're talking about philosophy to look at where it's come from, who it's come from, how it's grown.
How it's evolved.
So with that being said, Stoicism was a school of philosophy that was founded in ancient Greece around 300 BC by Zeno of Citium. It grew itself originally off the school of Cynics, which we won't be going very much into Cynics, but Cynics are very much similar to Stoics. They preach the same values. They just approach it in more of a questioning way. we're not really going to go into controversial topics. We're not going to talk about bad laws or anything like that. But Cynics certainly would go into that, and they'd question a lot of laws that are currently in place and how to challenge those. Stoics, it's not necessarily challenge things except for yourself.
Yep. And it's challenging yourself to grow and evolve constantly and to never settle for one certain thing.
Right. And so, interesting note, it may just be interesting to me, but Stoicism, Stoic, comes from the Greek word stoa, poikili, I think is how you say it. I'm not going to speak Greek fluently.
That's right.
But it means painted porch, which is essentially where Stoicism came from. Zeno taught in Athens on a painted stairway. He would frequently just teach there. He had people he mentored, and so they'd hold. You've heard about Socratic seminars. This was essentially a Socratic seminar
it's
for
common
Stoicism.
in schools now.
Yeah. And so he basically got it going. He adapted it from Cynics, and it found root in a lot of people, namely Cleanthes and Chrysippus, who took what Zeno was teaching, which was basically just the self-improvement and constantly challenging yourself and having that virtue in those 4 values.
Correct.
And they applied it to faith, they applied it to God, and they applied it to a larger scale of fate and how life itself was constructed.
And then they helped develop the 4 Stoic virtues, and then they developed and were considered secondary founders of Stoicism, etc. So,
and then obviously it had to go from Greece to Rome, who became the large empire that it was.
The massive empire.
And I think it's a really cool story of how it did that. So Rome implemented a fine that was deemed unfair by a large population of Greece. And so what Greece did is they sent 3 philosophers to the Roman Senate to argue it. And they had a Cynic, they had a Stoic, and then they also had another school of philosophy go there. And so they send these philosophers in. The first 2 go. The Roman Senate's not impressed. They're like, we're just going to implement this fine anyway. We don't care. And then Diogenes of Babylon, who was a Greek Stoic, he moved from Rome to Greece, studied under those philosophers that we talked about. He came in, and he didn't necessarily challenge the fine itself, but he challenged the concept of fine in human nature. And so his calm approach really won over. It was just the sheer calmness of it and the lack of emotion.
Controlling his emotions, right?
Which is what Stoicism is about.
Exactly.
And so the Roman Senate was really impressed with that. They even rescinded the tax, the fine, which is kind of unheard of Rome to kind of cave into that. And so the senators then took that to their homes, and Stoicism gained traction in Rome.
Well, that reminds me, you said he stayed so calm during it. It's like when you're in an argument with somebody.
Right.
The person who wins isn't the person who raises their voice the loudest
No.
and who can be the loudest in the room. It's the person who can stay content, stick to their morals, stick to the facts, stick to exactly what they've been arguing the entire time, and not letting their emotions get in front of their logic.
Right, and I do speech and debate. I'll just put that out there. I want to shout out our speech and debate team. They know who they are. Thank you, guys. But going through speech and debate, you talk to debaters who are going to national level, who are some of the smartest people I've ever met, certainly smarter than me. It's not necessarily the content of your argument. Once you nail the content, because everybody's coming into a debate thinking they're qualified,
right?
And you may be, but once you reach that level of being qualified, it's about how you control yourself, how you present yourself.
Right.
And so Stoicism always teaches that you present yourself in a calm, collected manner, which is going to win you a lot of arguments, especially in today's climate.
And that leads me to one of the things I was learning about was with, I believe he was a Stoic, Cato the Younger. He was around the Julius Caesar era, 45 BC, around that time. And one thing he always showed was never compromise.
Yeah.
That was one of his main teachings, was never compromise. So if you stay calm and you don't compromise your beliefs being forced by somebody else, and you don't cave in and then change your beliefs because you feel like they're stronger than you, then that's how you're going to hold your ground and maybe not win, but at least you're not going to lose an argument.
Yeah. Well, and we'll certainly talk about certain Stoics. I think that that's another one where you could take that the wrong way. There's definitely room for compromise.
Of course.
In arguments, I think it's more about your beliefs. And we talk about Cato the Younger. He was, I believe he was a student of Seneca, or somewhere related to Seneca, because I know Seneca was around 100 BC, and he taught a lot of people. He's the one who really, Seneca the Younger, he's probably my main inspiration in terms of Stoicism, and he was the one who really took Stoicism from something being talked about in the homes of Rome to something being talked about and brought up in the Senate. He was somebody who really carried the torch for Stoicism. And I know Rome was very conflicted on it. They had emperors who, you'd have one emperor who would outlaw philosophy completely, and then you'd have the next emperor would be like Marcus Aurelius, who I know you really like.
Yeah, Marcus Aurelius is definitely one of my biggest.
Who really embraced it, and it became a way of life in Rome. And so you kind of had that seesaw where it would be outlawed, and then it would be embraced, and it would be outlawed. And so that kind of continued, and then we can obviously talk about modern applications. I think Stoicism, you can tell me what you think. I think it was largely lost from when the Roman Empire collapsed to about like the 1800s, 1900s. I think it was lost.
I think it just was less popular because, like you said, the Roman Empire fell, and then without a lot of people, it wasn't able to spread. And then nowadays, currently, Stoicism, definitely, the principles of Stoicism are still very prevalent and very crucial to living an honorable life. And it's definitely not as prominent now as it used to be because of how, again, comfortable everything is and how easy everything is to do. But those, in my opinion, the principles of Stoicism applied to current life would make life so much better for so many people.
And I think it's not just Stoicism itself, it's philosophy as a whole, right?
Agreed, yeah.
Like, Greek and Rome, they were all philosophers first, and then they applied mathematic principles or what have you second.
Right.
And they were very forward-thinking, thinking about how the way life works. Whereas nowadays, and this certainly isn't a criticism, this is just how we're brought up, not a lot of people think about how we got here and how life truly works.
Right.
They think about what they're going to do with their friends or
just what they have now. I mean, and I think not looking into the past is a mistake. Looking into the past too much, your own past, is definitely a mistake. But understanding the history and where it grew from and where it was founded and then how it's developed is crucial.
Well, and I think we talked about why we wanted to create this podcast is because we do feel a wave, especially in our generation, where people are starting to think like that again.
There's definitely a shift going on. There's many people, especially at a younger age, starting to open their eyes and see more. And
so we want to be like the Stoics of old, who were kind of the torchbearers for Stoicism in their days. We don't think we're going to be that important, but we would certainly like to think we're part of that wave and we're advocating the message of Stoicism and philosophy as a whole.
We're just speaking about what we genuinely believe in.
Right, to a generation that, like, some people are feeling it, some people aren't. Wherever you may be, listening to this, maybe you can do your own research and draw your own conclusions. And whether they agree with Stoicism or not, doing your research, I think, and just looking at it is valuable, whether you agree with it or not.
And I feel a lot of people just have their opinions, but without having looked into issues at all. And this could be politically, this could be socioeconomically, anything like that.
Yeah.
Knowing your facts before you make your opinion is very important.
Right.
But it sounds so simple and obvious that I have to say that, but unfortunately, a lot of people don't base their opinions off facts, they base their opinions off their emotions.
Right. Which, there's something to be made of that. I think that it's a process where you do your research and you come at it with a factual, logical approach, and then you apply your emotions to it.
Agreed.
You certainly don't, through Stoicism, shut off all of your emotions, but you control them until, like you said, there's a manner which they are appropriate to be brought up. 100%. There are certainly issues in this country, all over the world, which it's very valid to get emotional about.
Right.
But you got to come at it the right way to where, even if you are emotional, you use that to your advantage, so you don't come off as just somebody who's a hot mess or hasn't done their research.
Right. And even if you have done your research and you get overly emotional, it's going to be hard for you to stick to your logic and just start going off on tangents that are completely unrelated to what you're trying to talk about or argue or discuss. So, again, just managing your emotions is one of the most important things.
All right. Well, I think we've gone over some serious stuff. You want to get to the fun stuff?
A little fun section, yeah. So, do you want to explain the guest spot giveaway?
Yeah, so, well, first let's just explain what this is. So, we're going to talk about a lot of serious things. This isn't, largely I don't think it's going to be a funny comedy podcast. Obviously, we'd like to have a comedic element to it. Like, I wouldn't want to sit here and listen to 30 minutes of two teenagers talk about serious stuff
I agree.
for 30 minutes straight.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna break up the serious stuff, and we're gonna have like a little 5-minute fun segment every episode.
Just take a little break. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just get a little laugh in. I think everybody needs a little laugh sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's basically what this is, and we're gonna use this now as an opportunity to announce our giveaway, which we're gonna just do straight from the jump. So obviously, being a podcast, guests are a very important part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of handpicking our first guest, we wanted to do it as a giveaway. So our giveaway is that if you follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok, and then follow our YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm. Please subscribe
and comment on our YouTube video. You will be entered in to be the first guest on this podcast.
Comment on the YouTube channel, comment on the Instagram post related to this episode, and go follow our TikTok account as well.
Yeah.
So
we wanna have you engage with us. We want to engage with you, and I think there's no better way than getting you guys to subscribe, buy in, and you could be a guest on this podcast. You could be sitting at the table with us.
Love to hear your opinion. We will link the Instagram profile, TikTok profile, and YouTube page in the description of this podcast, and then go check it out, go comment, go engage. We'll have you on the podcast if you win.
Because I didn't want to choose our first guest, so I think it's more than fair that our first guest engages with us.
I think they should choose to be with us if they really feel passionate about it. So,
right.
Yeah.
There's nothing we love more than passion, and so we'd like to have somebody here who maybe challenges us. It'd be great.
And we want to hear your opinions.
Yeah.
If it's agreeing with us, if it's disagreeing with us, we want to hear it. It's important.
Everything's love. Everything's self-growth.
Yes.
So with that out of the way, let's do our fun segment.
Let's do it.
Which this episode we're gonna do the most ridiculous news stories of the week. And so
ridiculous news
we
stories.
both picked 2. I haven't heard Mateo's. He hasn't heard mine. So I'm excited. I
found some crazy news stories.
Yeah, there's
bro.
some whack stuff out there. You want to go first?
Oh, man. Let's do it. Okay, so the first news article was Florida sheriff, burglars called 911 to get help stealing stuff, to help move stuff that they were stealing from a house.
Man. See, for me, first of all, I would think that would, in Florida, I feel like that's mild for Florida.
I think it's more of an Ohio thing. I think that's the most normal police call in Ohio, but Florida, I just don't understand.
Like Florida, there's got to be an alligator involved, or there's got to be drugs involved or something.
I don't understand.
That's pretty normal. And you gotta respect them, but at the same time, if you're gonna go burglarize something, and we're certainly not condoning robbery here.
No.
Bad thing.
It's horrible.
But if you're gonna rob a house or a business, at least have the work ethic or the manpower to help move stuff.
Yeah, they were just unprepared. Ultimately, you gotta prepare.
You gotta always have a game plan. Even if it's a legal activity, you gotta have a game plan.
Benjamin Franklin said, by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. And he wasn't even a Stoic, but that's
Benjamin Franklin? I thought that was Kobe.
Benjamin Franklin. I'm pretty sure. Fact check me on that.
I feel like that's a Kobe quote.
I'm pretty sure it's Benjamin Franklin. Don't quote me on that.
All right.
You go. What do you got?
I went a little out of the box. I went international. So an Air India flight from New York was slammed for systematic failure because they let an unruly male passenger pee on a woman in business class.
Wow. Not classy at all.
Well,
even on Spirit, I think that wouldn't be. I don't think that'd be tolerated even on Spirit.
Well, you wouldn't like the joke that I would make about it, so we're not going to do that.
We're going to keep this a very mature podcast. It's important.
We can go PG-13, but we can't go R.
We can't risk getting canceled. This is our first episode. Yes, okay. I'm going to go international with you. I'm going to meet you with this.
Okay.
German police seek help in solving bull sperm heist. Let me clarify. I don't know how many people it was. They stole 60 jars of bull sperm.
What are you going to do with that? What do you think?
That's what I was wondering.
What
do you need it for? Genetic modification? Hybrid making?
Well, I don't really think a bull human would work.
The Minotaur? Y'all know your
speaking of
mythology.
ancient Greece.
Yeah, speaking of ancient Greece. Yeah, was that Greek? The Minotaur? That was Greek, right?
I sure hope so.
Roman or Greek? I don't know.
Oh, all right. We'll end with a fun one. A little meth. Pigeon was caught in British Columbia wearing crystal meth like a backpack inside a prison yard.
How do you wear crystal meth like a backpack? Like in a Ziploc bag?
So you know how they like tie the little scrolls when pigeons used to be messengers?
Yeah.
So essentially you
like
have
Harry Potter.
Now I watch a lot of like live PD shows, so this is why I know this, but meth is usually in like little plastic baggies and they wrap them up. Okay. So you could just tie it to the... But what's actually...
You're turning yourself in right now.
Self-incrimination. I plead the fifth. Ugh. What's actually interesting to me to this, outside of the fact that it's like really... Like, could you imagine... For all the birds isn't real stuff, could you imagine the traction they'd find if they were like, oh, pigeons are drug mules now? Like that wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But what's interesting to me about it is the fact that this is actually a problem. Like, this is not the first time this has happened. They had...
In British Columbia or in the entire world?
Just in terms of, like, the prison system in general.
Okay.
Because, so I was reading this article and I clicked on a few other ones. They did drones because drones are obviously efficient. Because they're criminals. Like, there's sometimes there's a lot of presence of drugs in prisons. Yeah. And they need to get them in there somehow. Drones are pretty noticeable. You know, a drone flying in a prison is a big problem. Pigeons, not so much. So that's
how do you train a pigeon though?
Well, if they trained them to be messenger,
that training a pigeon would be.
Well, it's just like training another animal. You just have treats and
fair enough.
A stern.
I don't know. That blows my mind. I wouldn't do meth or train a pigeon. So.
You know, I mean, if I can train a dog to, sniff out blood sugar, I can train a pigeon to carry meth.
Fair enough. They did it in Harry Potter.
Could you imagine? I feel like those movies are unrealistic. Like, I feel like...
Harry Potter?
Yeah, they're unrealistic.
I hope you would find it unrealistic.
No, not for that. Just for, like, the social aspect. Like, how unrealistic it is that teenagers
movies interact. In general, dude... I've tried to act like people do in movies before. It doesn't go that way.
Expelliarmus.
No, it doesn't. It really... Hollywood is setting unrealistic standards for society.
This is supposed to be fun.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Fun. Back on track.
You can't be doing serious stuff.
I really think we should get back to Stoicism.
All right. Yeah. Enough meth talk.
Well, anyway, about meth, we're done with that. We're gonna dive a little deeper into specific Stoics that have personally touched us and influenced our daily habits and values and morals and just the way we think and the way we try to act. So if you want to go in order, I guess I'll start. Cato the Younger, I mentioned him previously. He was 95 to 46 BC was his prominency. So the three big things that I take from him are he embraced high standards, he uses pain as a teacher, and the importance of gestures. Now, the importance of gestures, I'm going to elaborate on that a little bit. I said before that he was prominent during the Julius Caesar reign when he was around, and there was a war, and Cato was losing. He was losing the war. And instead of being pardoned by Julius Caesar, he took his own life. Now, gesture... It's not hand gestures when you're talking. He did that. Another example was he would sleep with his soldiers in tents. He wouldn't go sleep in his own place even though he was the leader. Things like that. Gestures that other people see you do. Not doing it so other people can see it. But living with integrity and doing things as part of the people you are leading. That's what makes a fantastic leader, is empathizing and sympathizing with the people you're trying to lead.
Well, I think that speaks to... Stoicism largely is credited with a leadership philosophy. I think that many people who actually understand what Stoicism truly is think it's a way to commit yourself to great leadership. Outside of the self-improvement stuff, it's just it's how to interact with people, how to truly lead people. And this may be off topic, but it's really interesting in ancient Rome how they sentenced people to commit their own suicide. Doesn't that interest you?
It is interesting.
Seneca, who's one of my inspirations, the exact same thing under Emperor Nero. So it's just interesting. That would not fly in today.
Oh, of course not.
But it's just an interesting.
Well, and that's civilization has changed so much. You sentence people to their own suicide, and now suicide is one of the biggest issues in America and even the world that we're trying to prevent, and that we're talking about. So,
well, could you imagine all the debate about capital punishment if capital punishment was killing yourself? I'll tell you what,
it's interesting.
But I guess we can go into who's been my biggest inspiration is definitely Seneca the Younger.
Seneca the Younger.
He was around, like I said, from about 40 BC, 60 AD. He was somebody who really carried the torch in Rome.
So he was a big voice.
He was very controversial, interestingly enough. He's not so much controversial anymore, but in terms of the fact that he disagreed with former Stoics on a lot of things.
Like who?
He disagreed with, like I said, Diogenes from Babylon and some of the early Greek teachings. One of my favorite works is called Ad Lucilium Epistolae Moralis, which is Latin for Letters from a Stoic. It's a collection. It's about 400 pages. It's a collection.
Is that the one you sent me on the Google Doc?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's available to download free. Just look it up. Letters from a Stoic by Seneca. Absolutely free to download on Google.
Yep.
400 pages. It's
just put it in the iBooks. It's perfect. Yeah.
No, it's beautiful. It's basically just a compilation of the letters he sent to his friends or to Nero himself.
Right.
Who, interestingly enough, I said that Nero sentenced him to his own death, but Seneca was a mentor for him, and so I think there's something to be gained from Seneca. Was never mad about it.
Yep.
And he was falsely accused of plotting to kill Nero. Historians have found that he had no role in that plot, but that's kind of historical things. That's not really Stoicism.
Right.
But why I like the text is those letters. It's essentially like if you've ever had one of those books growing up where it was like a prayer a day and a lesson to learn a day. It's essentially one of those.
You can just
things.
read one of his letters every day. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. That's interesting because that reminds me of the other person. The biggest influence was for me was Marcus Aurelius, and if you've ever read Meditations, if you haven't, read it. It's structured in a way I can't even describe it. It's not written like a book. It's written as a list almost. And the thing that's interesting about what he writes is the very first part of that book is all the people in his life that taught him something very valuable. And that's something you can read once a day is there's like 3, 4, 5, 6 books in Meditations, and you can just read a book a day. They're super short, easy reads.
Right. That's the value, I think, of philosophical books, is philosophical books largely don't model themselves off a traditional book structure. They model them in a way so, because it's hefty information, like you said, it's tough to read, it's kind of unconventional in today's lifestyle, and so it's obviously I don't think they were thinking that way when they wrote that, but people who compile it today realize that like it's a hefty read, and so 20, 25 pages a day is a reasonable goal because you'll learn so much from 20 to 25 pages.
Right. And if you're truly trying to learn something, personally I can really only read 20, 25 pages, but then I go back and I really deep read the text. I annotate. I write down certain really important lessons that have really touched me, stuck with me. That's how to, in my opinion, that's how I would correctly read a book of philosophy and Stoicism, is slowly, because most of them aren't necessarily very long.
No.
It's quality information compiled into a shorter reading. And because it's a lot of quality information, you really have to take the time to break it down and analyze each bit that you're being told.
Right. I didn't really get to talk about some of Seneca's lessons. We gave him a history lesson on him. But some of my favorite teachings, especially from this book, Letters from a Stoic, is a lot of people, it may seem controversial to say, but a lot of people adopt a victim mentality nowadays.
I would agree.
And the problem with that is if you treat yourself as a victim, whenever you undergo a trial, you're going to be mad at the trial and mad at the situation instead of embracing it and getting through it. And I think that presents problems because everybody's going to go through issues. Some may face more issues, more may face larger issues, but everybody's going to face trials within their life. And if you adopt a victim mindset, essentially you both welcome those trials because you are looking and actively seeking for them to fulfill your fantasy that you are a victim. And then when you see yourself in those situations, you aren't able to adapt to the uncertainty. You aren't able to adapt to
You've
hardship.
already lost the battle once you've subconsciously accepted that you can't. And like they have an external locus of control where they're just assuming, oh, all these things are happening to me. I have no influence over the events that I'm undergoing and the outcomes that I'm receiving.
Right. And I think a kind of quote that I like from Seneca about this is he says that the life we receive is not short, but we make it so, because we are not ill-provided, but we use what we have wastefully. And to tie that back to the victim mindset, if you portray yourself as the victim, you go through with a certain lens about life, whether you are experiencing positive things, whether you're experiencing negative things, or whether it's just a casual day. Versus if you go through thinking that life today may present me with trials, or life today may be great, but either way I'm ready to face the day. That seems like a much healthier mindset, because you embrace every aspect of your life, and so your life is more fulfilled because you get through those hardships and then they become valuable lessons. Or you experience those joyous experiences and they become even more meaningful because you put them in the context of the fact that they came when other people were experiencing such hard things.
Right. Oh, you agree. And with every experience that you undergo, this is one of Marcus's teachings, was everything you do, every task that you are assigned, you must complete, and I'm quoting him here, with precise and genuine seriousness. Your concentration has to be absolutely on fleek.
On fleek.
It has to be. You have to be so innately focused on what you're doing that you have zero ability to be distracted by anything outside. That could be your phone. Mm-hmm. That could be a situation that is happening outside of what you're doing, and it's just subconsciously working its way into your mind. If you imagine if every task that you did, you were 100% focused on this task, how much would you accomplish? If you did one thing at a time, with innate concentration and pure focus, how much would you be accomplishing?
I tell you what, a lot more than I am right now.
I would agree.
And I think that...
I can say the same for myself.
Well, and I think that speaks to that Stoicism. Would you agree it preaches a lot of lofty goals and some that are unrealistic?
Yes.
So I think that you read that and you're like, well, there's no way that I'm going to be able to give 100% focus to everything. And you aren't, because that's just human nature. But if your goal is that, then you are going to improve your focus immensely.
You're exactly right. And if you set a goal and you don't reach there, but you have started working towards that goal, you're going to be far better off where you are now than if you hadn't started at all.
Right. Well, it's a good conversation, and I think it lends itself to the fact that there are large applications. I think we only get so much time to go over the brief values of Stoicism.
Right.
I've certainly learned more. I've learned that to touch on like your focus thing, a large part of Stoicism is about honor. And Seneca talks about how honorable acts are done without distraction, and they're done voluntarily, because when they're done voluntarily, they are done without distraction, they are done without complaint. I know.
That's a big Aurelius concept right there.
Is no complaining.
Never let anybody hear you complain, not even yourself. That's what he wrote about.
Well, and when you do that, you do it without distraction, you do it without complaint. It becomes a task that even if it's hard, you within yourself approve of you doing it.
Right.
And I think self-approval is something that this generation struggles with, and I think that if we cut out some distractions, obviously you're not going to be able to focus on everything 100%. Right. You cut out complaints, again, not 100%, but largely, and you kind of cut out the reluctance and uncertainty of your actions, then you would be able to accomplish a lot more, and your actions would have a lot more honor and virtue, which would achieve the ultimate goal of Stoicism.
And you just approach difficult tasks with a different mentality in the first place. If you're approaching it with, oh, this is hard, versus this is just another obstacle that I can overcome. Look how far I've come.
Right.
I can just do this again and do this again. And you have to ask God, and we'll get into God much deeper in the next subject. But if you're asking for challenges rather than being afraid of what challenges are going to come next, that's how you're going to succeed. If I told you to do 100 push-ups for $7 million, you would do 200.
I'd do 100 because then I'd get $7 million.
You understand?
You gotta remember that I'm a very practical man.
Fair enough. If you tell someone to do something for $7 million, they're gonna most likely do this.
Yes.
My point is to talk about motivation. People say they lack motivation. They're not lacking motivation. They're lacking purpose. If you truly want something, you'll be full of motivation forever. I mean, sorry, not forever. But you will find that motivation to start, and then you'll develop discipline, which leads to consistency and long-term success. But
no, I agree. I think that largely people and we'll talk about New Year's resolutions specifically in the next episode, but people complain about a lack of intrinsic motivation. Mm-hmm. And the reality is intrinsic motivation sometimes isn't enough because it's something that only you can control.
Right.
Versus you have extrinsic motivation. And that's where goal setting comes in, and that's where that discipline comes in that you talk about.
Yeah.
You got any more notes to add on any philosophers? I certainly could talk about Seneca a lot more. There's a lot more things that
we could dive much deeper in, but we don't want to nag on for too long. I would say look into Stoicism for yourself. Look up the most well-known philosophers and Stoics. Do a little bit of research. See what you think. Please, I would recommend buy Meditations by Marcus Aurelius if one of your goals is to read, or if you enjoy reading. I think you would gain. Anybody who would read it with an open mind would gain a lot of wisdom.
Well, and it costs? That book costs?
It's like $10 on Amazon. You can probably find PDF versions on iBooks, but I think it's a very small price to pay for the value that you're gaining.
Well, and even if you don't want to pay $10, you have Letters of a Stoic from Seneca, who exactly. I would say that he was a better Stoic, but that's a debate for another day.
It's all about, and I think morally what you believe in.
For me, one of the lessons that I want to close with from Seneca is that you want to find a mentor, obviously, to build your character off of. We already spoke about that. But also you want to find people to teach, and I think that speaks to kind of what we're doing here, right? Mm-hmm. Because Seneca in his Letters of the Stoic says that you are supposed to welcome those whom you are capable of improving, because the process is a mutual one. You find people who are malleable and have the same mindset of wanting to grow like you, and you teach them, you grow with them. And I think that's what we're trying to do here. Yeah. Like, we're certainly not trying to lecture anybody. We're not trying to call anybody out for lack of motivation.
And we're not trying to force our opinions on other people. No. We want to get that across is, ultimately, this is our insight and our opinions of what has worked for us and what we've seen work for people, what has worked for Stoics in the past, what has worked for great leaders today, what has worked for very wealthy people. Our goal is to help people. Mm-hmm. We want to spread our truth and our message and improve people's quality of lives and awaken people to their own potential. And
we're certainly not perfect. I'll speak for myself on this, but I certainly some days feel a lack of motivation, and nobody is perfect, and so we certainly can be called out for things, but largely we've improved.
Yes.
I've noticed. Yeah. We've talked over the past 6 months. I've noticed improvements from you. I hope that you've noticed.
I've seen massive gains with you, for sure.
So I think that, and we've both really grown with Stoicism through that time, and so we're trying to implement a similar process within our audience.
Yes.
And so we're not saying, be perfect. We're not saying meet these goals with flying colors. We're just saying try.
Try something new. Dive into something that maybe you're not comfortable with. That's the beauty of life, is there's so many things to do, so many things that make you uncomfortable. And when you try something new, that's where growth happens.
Right. And that's just the beautiful thing about Stoicism, is that it's really never explicitly stated that like you need to try new things, but I feel like that's an underlying value, because they're always about,
it's indirectly implied.
It's always about, embrace the uncertainty, adapt to the uncertainty,
constantly evolve, and you can't evolve unless you're not sticking in your comfort zone.
So try new things. Try this podcast.
Try this podcast. Subscribe to YouTube. Go follow the Instagram. Go follow the TikTok. Share this podcast with everybody you know. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.
And if you do all that, remember, guest spot giveaway.
You just might earn a spot.
Very valuable. Very valuable. All right. Thank you for listening. This has been the Gen Z Stoic podcast. Logging off.
Episode 1.